like you to recall a time when you were really hurt by another person. Maybe physically, maybe they lied to you or broke your trust. Maybe they stole something from you or put their interests ahead of yours. In that moment, and the weeks and the months following, what was it that you really wanted? What would have actually made you feel better? So in years of asking this question to my students, to justice professionals in courtrooms and prisons, and to victims of crime, a handful of people have told me, honestly, it would have made me feel better to key their car. But not many. Actually, nearly all of us want the same thing. You want them to look you in the eye, acknowledge what happened, and maybe, if it's genuine, apologize. And you want a chance to explain how they've impacted your life and see them really get it. You want answers to some questions so you can stop trying to figure out how this happened, how you could have protected yourself better, and whether you can trust someone again. It's important to know that these are not things our justice system offers crime victims. In fact, there are all sorts of real and symbolic barriers that prevent people who cause harm from being accountable to the people they hurt. The first thing they hear is, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. In other words, don't apologize and don't take accountability because you might jeopardize your legal case. For crime victims, the most consistent ways to participate in the justice process are a private consultation with the DA or reading a statement during sentencing. You may have no interaction with the offender whatsoever. They may not even be allowed to make eye contact with you in the courtroom. In most states, incarcerated people aren't allowed contact with victims and their family members, even if they both request it. So maybe we could accept some of these failures if our justice system worked in other ways. And by worked, I mean kept people on the outside safe and changed people on the inside for the better. But our justice system utterly fails everyone it touches. Not a surprise, right? In prison, people get hurt instead of helped. And no matter how strict we get, no matter how much control that we exert, 50 to 70% of people who leave prison are back within 3 years. The communities most with the highest rates of incarceration, poor communities of color, actually have more stress, trauma, and mental illness. I could go on and on. But instead, I want to talk to you about restorative justice, a surprising approach that might offer better outcomes for victims, offenders, and the communities they live in. And I want to suggest that in order for it to work, we all have to do our part. Now, restorative justice is not a new idea. Some people say it's the most common approach to justice across the world and throughout time, but that somewhere along the way, we forgot how to do it. It's a philosophy that says getting justice means repairing harm. And in restorative justice, repairing harm happens through face-to-face dialogues between the people harmed and the people responsible. For instance, here in Colorado, hundreds of cases are diverted from the courts each year through restorative conferences that bring together victims, offenders, and affected community members to agree on how to repair harms after a property crime or an assault. For example, someone who vandalized a local business might agree to repaint the wall themselves. Someone who caused a car accident might agree to pay the victim's medical bills. And sometimes agreements are symbolic, like writing a letter of apology doing a service project, or volunteering with the victim's favorite charity. But the goal of these agreements and the whole process is always to meet the needs that were created by the crime and to facilitate direct accountability. I am not saying that restorative justice is the answer to every criminal case or all the complex problems with the criminal justice system. And I want to be clear that victims should always have a choice about if and when they meet someone that harmed them. But what I am saying is that this is a transformative approach that can be used far more often than we may believe. And studies of Colorado's diversion programs show that 95% of both victims and offenders are satisfied with the process, and that offenders have a recidivism rate of just 8%. This is a select group of cases, but it's also an enormous difference. And this is what a system designed to keep people safe should be doing: healing victims and preventing harm. So if restorative justice works so well, why isn't it the basis for our current justice system? It's a great question. And it's why I started out my career studying why some states were adopting restorative justice into their state codes and others weren't. And I was actually surprised to find that most states have adopted legislation that supports the use of restorative justice in criminal cases, but that these policies are rarely put into practice by prosecutors, judges, and correctional officials. What I learned when I talked with these potential change agents is that they were either skeptical about restorative justice or they just didn't understand how it fit in their roles. In other words, they either don't wanna or they don't know how. See, restorative justice, face-to-face dialogue about crime, conflict, pain, suffering, it's incredibly difficult, not just for justice professionals, for all of us. I teach a class on restorative justice, and my first reaction to conflict is to hide in my office and avoid eye contact with my email account. I once engineered an elaborate game of phone tag that went on for weeks just by, calling at the time when you knew the person wouldn't pick up, just to avoid a difficult conversation. These are silly little examples of our very serious impulse to hide from the people and the situations that cause us pain. My theory is that isolation is our default response to crime because it's actually our default response to conflict. We block, we ghost, we cancel the people who hurt us, and we overuse prison not because we actually think it makes things better, but because we're afraid of being hurt and we don't know what else to do. We want accountability, but we don't want to have the hard conversations that it requires. We'd rather believe there's a simple solution that can keep us safe and protect us from pain. It's easy to feel that mass incarceration is something done to us by politicians, police, prosecutors, and prison guards. But it's important to remember that it's something we invest in each time we build virtual and physical walls between ourselves and others. As a result of our inability to face those we hurt and those who hurt us, we participate, knowingly or unknowingly, in systems of control and isolation. Our policy problem is a people problem. The good news is, restorative justice offers a people solution. It teaches us that what changes our choices is actually not laws. Otherwise, the drug war would be all wrapped up, right? It's actually coming face to face, realizing that we've hurt someone and being willing to make amends. And similarly, if we want to change the criminal justice system, we have to face each other, take responsibility for our roles in mass incarceration, and do what we can to repair the harm. That's why innovative prosecutors Yes, they exist. Creative correctional administrators, committed legislators, even researchers like me are increasingly coming together to have these hard conversations. We're listening to the people who are most impacted: incarcerated people, their families, crime victims, and survivors. And we're designing solutions together that we can all agree on. My experience with restorative justice tells me that the solutions we forge together are far more powerful than the ones we hand down from the safety of our courtrooms and our offices. And I believe this is a restorative movement that can transform the way we think about doing justice. But it will take more than those of us working in the justice system to transform it. It will actually take all of us, because real criminal justice reform will never happen until we face our fear of facing each other. And it's a really hard thing to do, but I know we can do it because I see incredible, courageous examples in my work all the time. Not long ago, I sat at a little round table in the prison visiting area with the wife and the daughter of a man killed in a robbery and the person serving life without parole for his murder. The victim's family brought this little hardbound notebook filled with all their unanswered questions, all the things they wanted to tell this man about their lives and what they had lost. And I watched as they led this beautiful, really heartbreaking, but empowering dialogue. And for 6 hours, I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Yes, because we had prepared for this moment for months, but mostly because they had the wisdom. The innate human wisdom to say what needs to be said and to do what needs to be done to further our own healing and that of our communities. And you have that wisdom too. We all have the wisdom and the skill and the compassion to restore ourselves to ourselves, not through isolation, but through connection. Thank you.